everyone, and welcome to the 20th concert, streaming live from Teachín Ceoil. So this month, obviously we're kind of going with a spooky theme here. We are fast approaching Halloween and what was Samhain, which is an interesting time of year. It's a time to really kind of focus on a lot of the fun stories and music that have to do with, you know, the not quite real, not quite in our normal everyday life sort of music. So to start us off, I'm going to play a set of jigs. The first one is The Haunted House, which is a composition of Vincent and Peter Broderick. I'm not sure which one of them actually composed it. But so the story goes, they were cycling home after being out most of the night and passed a big house with a big party going on and dancers and musicians and all that. But they were tired and they went on home. They said they hadn't seen that house before, and they decided they'd call in the next day to see how the party went and all that, and say hello. The next day they came by and all that was there was an old ruin. So, The Haunted House, and I'm going to follow that up with a tune I got from the playing of James Kelly called Dark Corners. So, The Haunted House and Dark Corners. And this version of The Haunted House is a bit different. I got it from Vincent Griffin, and he put a few screams in The Haunted House, so hope you enjoy. Now, in the crossing over between worlds and all of that, there are a lot of stories in Ireland and tunes associated with them, having to do with the fairies. Now, the fairies are the little people, the two of the Denan, those that you come across and they're somewhat charmed. You hear of leprechauns, you hear of banshees, which is just ban is woman, she is very, very woman. And they're a great source of tunes. So I'm going to continue on with a couple of hornpipes. The first is called the Fairies' Hornpipe. And so the story goes. A fellow was coming home late one night, as you do. And it wasn't far home. He was coming home from a wedding, I believe. And he was lost. He couldn't find his way home. He looked around, and it should have been familiar roads and fields, and he was completely lost. And he went rambling over fields and through this park, and then he came upon fairies dancing and a piper playing, and he was enraptured by the tune and the dancing and fell asleep. And woke the very next morning and was only 2 fields away from home, and he could see his house. So he went in, and they said, well, where have you been? You weren't far away. And he says, well, he told the story, and they didn't believe him at first. He's like, oh, but I have the tune the piper was playing. And that was the Fairies' Hornpipe. And I'm going to follow that up with a tune called The King of the Fairies, which has a lot of different side stories associated with it. It's a set dance, a rather old one at that, which is meant for a solo dancer to kind of show off what they can do. But it said if you played The King of the Fairies 3 times, well, he may just appear. So I'll only play it twice. But the Fairies' Hornpipe and The King of the Fairies. was the Fairies, Hornpipe, and the King of the Fairies. Alright, I'm going to continue on with a couple more jigs, because apparently spooky tunes tend to be jigs. So there are a lot of jigs in this concert. The first one is the Lúchrachan, or that's another way of saying leprechaun. That's a small fairy man there. It's a composition of Junior Crane's, and his story behind the tune is that he came to his down to his room one morning and saw that things were not placed where he left them the night before, and so he knew the fairy folk had been about, and so he got his son and they hid behind a cupboard and waited the next day, and sure enough, the little man came down the chimney and got a little pan and started stirring up the fire and to cook himself something, and Junior and his son popped out and snagged him and said, "Oh, give us your gold." And he said, "Well, I have no gold, but I can give you some advice on how to get some." And so he gave him advice on what animals to keep and what crops to sow and that sort of thing. And he looked on the wall and saw that Junior was a fiddle player, and so he said, and I'll give you this tune as well. And that's the story of the Lúchrachan. And I'm going to follow that up with another great old jig called the Gold Ring. And as Seamus Ennis tells the story, the fellow was out, coming home late one night, as you do, and he was in a wooded area, and he came upon a fairy dance. There was a piper playing this great jig, this big epic jig, and the king and the queen of the fairies were there dancing. And he was so enraptured that he didn't realize it, but he'd come out from behind the tree where he was hiding and startled the fairies, and they all disappeared. So he walked to where the piper had been playing to kind of have a look around where they had been, and he saw this tiny, tiny gold ring left behind. So he picked it up, and he went to an area, a fort near the cliffs, a fairy ring there, and put the ring on a stone and called out, "Hello, anyone? You dropped this ring. I've brought it back to you," because he knew where they lived, as you do. And the piper himself came back and thanked him for returning the ring, and he said, "Ask anything you like, and we'll grant it." And the fellow, being a musician, said, "I was enraptured by that tune. If you give me that tune, we're square." And so the little piper pulled out his pipes and played the tune through once, and being a fairy tune, it stuck in his mind, and off he went. And that's the story behind the tune called the Gold Ring. Now, in reality, there are many, many versions of the tune, the Gold Ring, all with somewhat similar and somewhat different stories. But this is the version of the tune that I have and play, and that's the story from Seamus Ennis. So, the Lúchrachan and the Gold Ring. Right. Let's see, what am I going to continue on with now? Oh, I'll play you a slow air called Paddy's Rambles Through the Park. And this tune comes from John Doherty, from Donegal. The story here is that Paddy was coming home late one night, as you do, and he was coming through a park or a field area on a farm, and the people working land had piled the stones from the fields in these piles in these cairns all around the park. And as Paddy was coming through, he heard this Banshee keening, this wailing song and a lament coming from behind one of the cairns. And so he wandered over that way to see if he could find the voice that was coming from there. And as he got closer, he realized it wasn't coming from behind that cairn, it was coming from behind the cairn over there. And so he changed direction and went off towards another one. And as he got closer, he realized no, it was coming from a different one. This went on, and he never did find the singer, but he had the tune. He had the tune in the end. So, Paddy's Rambles Through the Park. Rambles through the park. Alright, I'm going to play a couple of marchy, barn dancey sorts of things now. All about fairy forts. One is Around the Fairy Fort. I think that's another Vincent Broderick tune. And the second one is The Fort of the Fairy Queen. And that's an Nolan Casey tune. And fairy forts are basically old ring forts, often from around the Iron Age, that are all over Ireland. There's like 30 to 40,000 of them scattered throughout the country, it's come to be believed that they're the homes of the fairies. That's where you would go to interact with them, and where you would avoid to keep from getting in trouble with them. So Around the Fairy Fort and Fort of the Fairy Queen. Fairy Fort and the Fort of the Fairy Queen. Right. I'm going to finish off this fairy section with a couple of very well-known reels. The first is the fairy reel, as you would have to play. There's several different versions of this tune. I'm going to just play the simple one in D. And the other tune is called The Pinch of Snuff. And the story behind this tune is a bit more mischievous and fun. So there was a fella who had a rambling house, which is a gathering place, a place where everybody, came. It's where they held the ceilidhs. It's where they got together and told stories and had great fun. Anyway, his was the house where that happened. And so he was a great man for fun. And after a great ceilidh, one summer evening, and everybody's going home around sundown, a little man came up to him and said, "I hear you're a great man for fun." So, and he says, "Yes, I am." And he says, "All right. Well, here's the thing. There's a wedding spree going on over the hill there, and we want to take the bride away and replace her with a changeling. And in order to do this, we need a mortal witness, and we have to make sure she sneezes 3 times without anyone saying 'bless you' or 'Jeeleen,' which is 'bless you' in Irish. And if we can get her to sneeze 3 times with no one saying 'Jeeleen,' no one saying 'bless you,' we can take her away, and it'll be a great party. It'll be great drink and dance and great music, and you should come on and enjoy it and be our witness." And so he's like, "Oh, sure, why not? It's free fun. Here we go." And so the little man whisked him away, and before he knew it, they appeared in the rafters above the dance. And so, the great party is going on down there, and the tune is playing away. And the little man says, "There she is, the one with the black hair and the blue dress. All right, whenever she comes under here, I'm going to drop a pinch of snuff on her upper lip and then have her sneeze. And we have to make sure you see it, and no one says 'Jeeleen,' no one says 'bless you.'" So she comes whirling around right under him. Little man drops the pinch of snuff. She sneezes. No one says a word, because with all the dancing and the music and everything, no one heard it, and the dance goes on. And he's like, "There's one." Next time she comes whirling underneath, little man drops a pinch of snuff. She sneezes. Nobody says 'Jeeleen,' no one says 'bless you.' At this point, the man is sitting in the rafters going, "Well, she's a lovely girl, and this is her wedding day," and he's getting his conscience was kicking in, and he was starting to feel bad for having any part in this. And the 3rd time she comes around, the little man drops the pinch of snuff, lands on her upper lip. She sneezes. He looks around. No one is going to say anything. So the man shouts at the top of his lungs and lets go of the rafters and says, "Jeeleen!" Comes tumbling down. And here he is, a stranger in a strange house and up in the rafters. And so he had a great story to tell. In any case, this was the tune that was playing, supposedly, the pinch of snuff. So the fairy reel and the pinch of snuff. So this next tune, the two more jigs. The first one is Ghost Story, written by Tommy Peoples, and the second one is Conall's Ghost. Now, ironically, Ghost Story doesn't really have a ghost story to go with it, as far as I know. He wrote it in memory of ghost stories that he'd heard, just because it had a ghost story kind of feel to it. Now, Conall's Ghost, on the other hand, does have a story, and that is that there were these fellas up in Donegal who, as Con Cassidy told it, had a still up on one of the little mountain streams where they made poutine, which was very illegal at the time. So they were very guarded about who knew about the still, and it was up in the hills. So they're up in the still, they're working away, having some poutine, and a couple of them got hungry and decided to go back and get some food, and left one fellow behind to guard the still. And he's all alone there at the little hut where they had their still, and he hears this piper coming closer, and as Con Cassidy said, he wasn't very musical, but he heard this piper, and it came closer and closer until it was just outside the door, but there was no one there. And it's a very simple little tune, Conall's Ghost. Apparently, either he wasn't a very good piper, or the man who learned the tune didn't learn much of it. But Conall's Ghost. First, Tommy Peoples' Ghost Story. ghost story and Conall's ghost. Alright, I'm going to continue on with another air. This is the spookiest of tunes in my opinion, bPucaí. It comes from the Great Blasket Island off the coast of Kerry. And there have been poems written about it. Leanne read the poem Johini wrote for this air last time I played it in this concert series. Last year, or early on actually, probably second or third concert, I don't remember which. But there's also a song that goes with it that's a lament of a selkie. But that's a woman of the sea. There's a big story there. But the story of the tune originally is supposedly that a fellow was out on the boat and it was very foggy and it was a very, still day. And he heard this tune coming from an island that had long been abandoned, and there was no one on it. And he called it bPucaí, the tune of the ghosts, or the tune of the spirits. And there's theories that just the way the tune lies, he could have heard a whale song, or who knows what. But this is bPucaí. right, now we're getting into the serious bits. So the next set of jigs is the drowning at Bhrochaise drowning. Back in, I think, when was it? I have the date here. February 8th, 1813. There was a very calm night, and the entire Donegal, or southwest Donegal, fishing fleet were out fishing herring in Bhrochaise Bay. And rather suddenly, a storm blew up and capsized all of the boats. And hundreds and hundreds of fishermen died that night. It's a well-documented, true event that took place. It's one of the most tragic fishing things that happened, fishing accidents that happened in Donegal, recorded Donegal history. So, on to the story. Now, that all is fact, but of course you must have a story. So, the story goes that there was a woman who came to buy herring from the fishermen on a regular basis, she'd been down that morning to get herring off the fishermen. They refused her. They sent her away and taunted her. And one of the men threw a spiked fish, one of those spiny fish at her. And she was very put out. She lived alone, and in revenge for this act, by the way, story has it that one man spoke up for her after this happened to her. And she told him afterwards not to go fishing that night. She went on home. And the story goes she had a local girl come up to her house later that day, and she had a pot on to boil, or on the fire, and with a little small wooden bowl floating in it. And she stood in the doorway and asked the girl, oh, what did she see? And she said, oh, well, there's a wooden bowl floating in the pot. She says, all right. And he asked her a bit later, and she says, oh, the bubbles are rocking the little bowl everywhere. And she says, keep watching. She says, oh, the water has tumbled the bowl over, and it's flipped over. And she says, oh, all right, you can go on home now. So that night, the storm blew up, and many people died. And supposedly she was never seen again after that night, though she'd been a local before that. Anywho, so that's the story there, and the tune was, apparently there was a piper heard on the cliffs above the bay, playing this tune while the storm was blowing up. So that's Bhrochaise drowning, Bay Bhrochaise. And the second tune I'll play is called Pull the Knife and Stick It Again. And legend has it that this is what a witch will ask you to do after you've stabbed her, because if you stab her a second time, she'll heal herself. All will be well. So, the drowning at Bhrochaise, and pull the knife and stick it again. in my go. Sorry about that. Apparently, we're being surrounded by helicopters. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'm going to just keep going. So that was Bhrochaise, the Brookless Drowning, and Pull the Knife and Stick It Again. All right, I'm going to play a couple more reels. These I just got out of I think one of them I got out of Bhrochaise's collection, and one might have been in O'Neill's, I'm not sure. But the first tune is called The Hag's Grave, and the second one is called After the Sun Goes Down. I figured you'd put the two of those together, and it's a spooky enough set for this concert, so hope you enjoy, and hopefully the helicopter will go away soon. That helicopter is awfully close. I'm very sorry about this. And there's nothing I can do about it. So, I'm going to play you a couple more jigs. That's why not. The first one is a very old tune, and I'm not sure the story behind it, though many people have asked. And it's associated with the playing of Piper Garrett Barry, but it long predates his playing of it, and it's called I Buried My Wife and Danced at Her Grave, or Danced on Top of Her, depending on who you ask. And the second one is called The Banshee's Wail. Now, as I mentioned before, a banshee is a fairy woman, and if you hear a banshee's wail, that keening and crying means someone is going to die, because that's what the banshee is lamenting, someone's death. So I buried my wife, death's on top of her, and the banshee's wail. and the Banshee's Wail. So, alright, I'm going to continue on with a couple of hornpipes. Again, I don't really have stories behind these, but they certainly fit the bill. The first one is called The Smell of the Bog, and the second one is called The Brown Coffin. Now, the smell of the bog comes up in a lot of songs when the dead come back to talk to their loves. When that seems to happen in a few songs. So, figured the smell of the bog and the brown coffin together, and they kind of sit well together as well. Especially when I'm playing the smell of the bog in F. It's sometimes played in G, but I think I have it in F. So, hope you enjoy these hornpipes. bog and the brown coffin. All right, thank you all so much for joining me here, I'm going to play one last set to leave you. A couple of slip jigs called My Mind Will Never Be Easy and Don't Leave Me Alone.